Just mum and dad were getting a bit tired on the farm and a bit sick of it, sort of heading into their late 60s. And we just said, look, we're not doing much up here. Maybe we'll come back to the farm and see whether I'm a farmer.
G'day and welcome to the Farms Advice podcast with your host, Jack Creswell. Whether you farm it, service it, or just love it, this podcast is for you. We'll bring you the techniques and technologies you can implement into your day straight from the leaders and innovators themselves. Spread the Farms Advice so that we can reach more farmers right across Australia. Follow us on all of your socials at Farms Advice, and let's get into this episode. Well, welcome to Farms Advice podcast. Dave Ferguson, great to have you on the podcast, and also an exciting topic that I love getting into all the time. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, David, tell me a little bit about yourself, your connection to Australian agriculture, where you started and how you've sort of lent into this role now, quite new sort of for the industry, but yeah, elaborate for us.
No, so look, I've got a background in property development and in photography and in not doing much until I was about 25 or 6, just enjoying life in Melbourne town. And we're up in Queensland for a while, for sort of 8, 9, 10 years. I was doing a lot of wedding photography up there. And my wife, who was in sales sort of up there, and before that she was sort of a restaurant manager in Hobart. We were sort of dog paddling a little bit up there, and Noosa is quite a transient sort of population, so it's sort of fun for a while, and then you lose all your mates and you've got to go around and look for some new mates again, which is pretty poor and a bit embarrassing. So we just mum and dad were getting a bit tired on the farm and a bit sick of it, sort of heading into their late 60s. And we just said, look, we're not doing much up here. Maybe we'll come back to the farm and see whether I'm a farmer. So we decided that was a pretty good idea. We rented our house up that we had up there in Sunshine Beach near Noosa, and we came back to the farm, back to Gundagai, which was a bit of a culture shock for the wife. Instead of having Mai Tais at Sales by the ocean, she was having a beer on the veranda. So then we sort of we did that for a little while, so 18 months or so, to work out whether we liked where it was going. She started an asset finance business through some people we knew in Queensland, operating, it's getting loans for tractor parts and things like that. And then the travel kind of got a bit to her, so we'd had discussions about adding some agritourism on the side of the farm over the first 18 months or so, but then we started to do that on the side. So I've been running the farm up until about 5 months ago. I'd been running the farm for sort of 9.5 years, as well as putting together this other business on the side. So it's been a pretty busy decade.
So you've had to actually drag your parents back into the farming operation?
Well, they kind of got a second wind when we did a lot of the place had been run the same forever, and the breath of fresh air that I provided, basically I didn't do anything that they hadn't thought of doing themselves and just hadn't done. So we did a lot of fencing projects. We did a lot of efficiency gains through tracks and laneways and upgrading of yards and sheds and things like that. We started a self-replacing fat lamb flock of composites, because lamb prices were heading up, and with them the ewe prices were heading up, and we had a very old flock So we had to make a decision of how we were going to replace the animals, because they were winding down before we got there. So the stock numbers were dropping, the age profile was getting older and older. So we put in a self-replacing. That was our plan anyway, between Dad and I, to sort of combat having to restock 200 at the time, only $230 ewes, but that was prohibitive. So, if we're trying to put 1,000 or 1,500 into the mix each year, you're getting up into the hundreds of thousands to get these animals. So that was a good project, and it's sort of starting to. It takes a while to work through the pipeline as well. So it's only really just getting going in the last couple of years. We had 2,000 new lambs last year. We had another 1,300 this year. So now the age profile is really quite young. We can start culling a bit harder on performance and type, and really start to tidy up the animal program.
Beautiful. Let's go back a little bit into your decision to come back to the family farm. Did you give yourself a certain period of time that you're like, 2-3 years, if this is for us, I'm just going to cut my losses and go back?
Well, that was always an option. Look, financially, we didn't, we weren't flying. We were covering ourselves, but we weren't getting anywhere. So we just thought that the opportunity was there to walk into a business that had been running for a long time and put a mark on it, and actually start to try and pave our future a bit. So I think if it didn't work, I was probably going to the mines for a while, really. We didn't really, I suppose we gave ourselves about 18 months to work it out. And then it was just enjoyable for me personally to be back on the land. I'd sort of gone from Melbourne to Brisbane to Edinburgh to Noosa, in like down and down and down in population, and big cities were starting to get on my nerves. And I think having the upbringing of being on the farm, it made it very comfortable coming back to it, especially with a young child and wanting to have another kid. It made sense at the time, and I'm not sure that my wife for a long while really was very happy about it, but she could see the outcome that was likely was positive for us as a family group. So I think she kind of grinned and bared it for a while before it grew a bit more on her. And then when she got stuck into her own part of the tourism wedding stuff, she really sort of got stuck into it and was busy and motivated, and everyone was on the same page trying to do the job. So yeah.
And coming in with new ideas, how were they received from the parents? I think it is coming in with the new generation coming back to the farm. I was the same. I was living over in London, and then I sort of had it in my head it was a plan B, but it was always going to be the plan A at some stage. But did you feel that for yourself? You relied on that? You had a bit of a backing there just in case?
Yeah, look, it was always there as a backup. I think I was probably dissuaded out of it by my parents over the 2000s when they were, doing things pretty tough. I think they were sort of going, "Oh, what would you want to do this for? This is a terrible job." So I think I kind of was actively dissuaded from it. I think the timing was good, because I think when I came back as a 35-year-old man with some responsibilities, it meant that I wasn't subservient to my father for a long time. And when I got back, I'd achieved certain things in my life that mum and dad had seen me do and seen that I was capable of doing. And they were pretty supportive of change, and that coming from me. They were supportive pretty much the whole time. But I reckon if I had gone back at 22, I think it probably would have frustrated the living daylights out of me, because I wouldn't have proven myself, and they wouldn't have that proof that I was capable, and I would have had to sit under the old man as it was. I think it was the timing was sensible, to have the gap there, really.
Great stuff. And then that led you in joining the family farm to starting up Kimo Estate and getting into the world of agritourism. Talk to me through that operation and
So
got started.
we were having a glass of red on a hilltop, having a barbecue actually on the site where the first eco hut that we built is. And my father said to me, just looking out over the countryside, he said, "It'd be a good spot for a house." And I said, "Well, why don't we build one?" And we sort of looked at each other and thought, that's not a bad idea. So we sort of made a few inquiries, and we had some workers' cottages that we were in the process of tidying up. We had two options: bulldoze them or fix them up and do something with them. And the rental on them at the time was only about $60 a week or something, so it wasn't worth doing them up to have a tenant in there. Airbnb had obviously been a pretty big thing in the city, so we sort of did that to begin with, and that worked pretty well. Occupancy was pretty good. Challenging with linen and things like that. We had some sort of operational challenges at the time. We were washing sheets, and when it got really busy, so at the start it was just my wife, and then myself and mum giving a hand, and dad doing what he could, and it got pretty challenging there for a while, until we started staffing it properly and at the right level, which we didn't achieve for a while. But we once we got it staffed, and we put in the eco hut, which was pretty much another bottle of red with an architect I know saying, "Hey, I've got this good idea. It'll be really cool. We'll get you a lot of exposure." I had some sort of experience in marketing stuff through my wedding photography. And I thought, look, if we can get this in front of people, this little A-frame thing that you're going to design, we can really, really get it rolling. It did better than I expected. It took us all a bit by surprise. We'd done our figures on 2 nights occupancy a week, being Friday, Saturday.
Yep.
Pretty much within 3 months, it was about 90%. And then after 5 months, it's been pretty much 100% occupancy ever since. So then we sat for a little bit and then tried to work out how we were going to afford to build another couple. We put in for a grant with the New South Wales tourism guys, with Destination New South Wales, and we were successful in that. So that meant that we could build one and get another one on the side, essentially for nothing, with the proviso that we were going to employ more people. That was the basis for the grant. And I think when we did it, we had 2 part-time employees. But once we got those next 2 huts, 2 casuals, in fact, once we got those next 2 huts going, we ended up with sort of 2 full-time, 20 casuals. And, it's just sort of gone on and on and on and on. And then after we'd done that, we were on a bit of a roll. So we bought an old convent in Gundagai, and turned it into a boutique hotel as well, which is called Flash Jacks. And it kind of sits at the upper end of accommodation within a pretty large radius, 100k radius of Gundagai at the time. There's a couple more bobbed up since, but it was challenging in its own right. It started in the May of COVID, so we just spent about 1.6 million on it, buying it and renovating it, and then we were told we couldn't have any customers because no one was allowed to go anywhere. So it luckily got finished, and then yeah, and then it's sort of picked up a bit. Well, it picked up a lot in the post-pandemic rush, and then it's sort of settled back down to a pretty nice level of sort of between 60 and 70%, depending on the month. And it's going well. And then the whole time we've been running weddings as well, in an old grain shed that was full of old bits of lupins and molasses and broken down machinery, and we cleared it out and built some toilets and turned it into a sort of 180 person function venue down on the river flats, looking out over the sort of river flats of the Murrumbidgee. And we sort of hold the ceremonies in the gardens of the old homestead there. And we're up to around about 30 to 34 weddings a year held at that venue. So that in turn feeds the accommodation feeds the wedding business, and we're looking pretty soon to try and add a bit more to it, with the same theory that they sort of link into each other and feed each other. So yeah, it's been a terrific addition to the place.
You don't sound very busy at all. Across the whole lot, I suppose. How many rooms, like how many beds do you have right across?
Currently, we've got the ability to have 54 people staying. Soon, we're just putting in a DA for another 3 huts. And then we're trying to get to the point where we have a restaurant at the homestead, and then add the other part of the homestead as a sort of a higher end boutique hotel with a sort of bit more of that sort of grand colonial type feel to it, which is kind of a thing that we have a little bit with Flash Jacks, but not on the farm. So
yeah, the restaurant will be on the farm. Is that the
restaurant? Yeah, the restaurant will be on the farm. Yeah. So and we think that'll probably feed a bit more of the accommodation, so we'd expect the vacancy rates to get lower because of the restaurant. We think that we'll be able to have a lot of groups that come and stay and to go to the restaurant with that intention. So yeah, so look, it's all a bit of a whirlwind, and the COVID stopped us in our tracks, and it took a while to get the motivation to get going again. But now we're going. We feel like we're really rolling along. So
great stuff. And for yourselves, like, what do you think, Kimo Estate? What's the special sauce? Why is it going so well? Do you think you got into it at sort of perfect timing, early days?
Yeah, we were a bit lucky with the timing, I think. I think we kind of got onto that tiny house movement pretty early on in the piece. We were lucky that we got the right architect as well. I think if the buildings of the A-frame things have been the main driver for our following and success, I reckon. That we got lucky that we had the right person design them and the right heads together to get to the point where we were happy with the design. I think that it's a space that's a little bit underdeveloped in Australia. If you go to England, you'd know places like the Cotswolds and Lakes districts where you can go and stay on people's converted barns, and Australia just doesn't really have a very developed, especially New South Wales. Victoria probably more so than us, but New South Wales is pretty underdeveloped, and southern New South Wales is even more undeveloped than the rest of New South Wales. So I think there's that opportunity to fill a bit of a hole and unlock a part of New South Wales less travelled. People want to go somewhere where their mates don't go every weekend. I think that off the beaten track kind of feel that we can give people. I mean, for instance, we have people that drive. Well, the best one was a lady got on the plane in Tokyo, flew to Sydney, hired a car, drove down, stayed in the huts for 4 days, didn't see a person, drove back to Sydney, got on a plane, went back to Tokyo. Now, she had 4 days where she didn't see another human. You're living in Tokyo, you're never going to get that. You're living in Sydney, you're never going to get that. So I think that disconnection from general public, and also the ability to reconnect with whoever's there with you without any distractions. I think that's kind of, there's no, your mobile's not going off all the time if you turn it off, obviously, but you're not checking your emails. There's no TVs, there's no radios there. You're just there, listening to the crackle of the fire and the birds and the sheep. And I think that's the appeal, that's sort of that the ability to be away from people. I think that's the draw card.
You should get that woman to come back over, but film the whole sort of journey getting there.
Yeah, it'd be terrific, wouldn't it?
Got like head noises throughout the day, and then you get to Gundagai and just sort of open, listening to the birds singing. That would be pretty cool. Or even get someone from Sydney or something, that'd be pretty cool. But red tape for the industry for agritourism to truly grow. You reckon New South Wales has a bit too much for it at the moment?
A bit too much red tape. Yeah, definitely. But the Building Code of Australia is owned by a Swiss company. So if you've got people writing your building code for you and they're the other side of the world, you're always going to have trouble. I reckon, we've run into stuff like when we did the grain shed, they wanted a path made of concrete from the car park, which is about 200 meters away, to the disabled accessible car park. And I said, well, we're going to let people drive right to the front door and get out if they've been in a wheelchair. Like, we're not going to make them, wheel 200 meters to get there. We can get them right to the front door. Like, and they can unload there. And they said, oh no, you need this path. And I said, well, what about if I'm doing a polo field in the future? Like, do I need a concrete path to the polo field? And they go, yep, you do. So there's the stupidity of the planning regulations are based around cities, not country areas. So I don't think they'll ever fix that. I just think that'll probably get worse and worse and worse. But you can get around it. In the end we just screwed the handicapped sign to the front door of the shed where there was a concrete landing, and they said, yep, no, that's fine. So it's fine for a car to park right at the entrance where people are coming in and out. That's fine, but having them dropped off and parking around the corner is not. So anyway, it's you just got to deal with it. These new huts are worse than the last time I put the same plans in for these 3 huts, and it's taken me an extra year and $12,000 so far to get to the point where I can even submit the plans. So it's not easy, but you just got to find the right people to give you a hand. That's if you got them, it's fine.
That's it. I've got plenty of questions just rushing through my head at the moment. But do you think Kimo Estate and the Eco Hut would be the same if it wasn't on the hill? Or would you have started?
No, I think the hills are important. I think the views are important. I think that's. I mean, look, you're on the river flats. The only place to look at them from, they don't look that special when you're down there. So you've got to get up and have a look. Gundagai is pretty famous for its hills. So I think if you're putting it down the bottom, you'd be missing, we'd miss the opportunity that we had presenting itself to us. It made building it a bit difficult in the wind when you've got scaffolds and stuff, but it kind of set the tone for the building, the shelter from the elements, it kind of framed, the hills framed the the concept design as well. So I think you'd end up with a different structure if you were somewhere else. But yeah, look, the idea to stick it on the hill was pretty much the starting point that led to everything working.
It's great when I'm like out mustering or something and we go to the rise of our little anthill. I'm just sort of thinking, geez, it'd be cool if it was a bit like Kimo's hill that you have as well. But pretty special. And if it was on Grand Designs, it would be that grandeur, as a presenter would say, and probably it'd be great to have you on Grand Designs or something. The English one, I think that's a cool one. Or have you done?
Yeah, we have made contact with them, but they're a hard nut to crack. So we're putting applications, but we just can't get through to the right people. We get picked up by all sorts of TV programs, but we just haven't got through to those guys. And I think possibly with those guys, our building's a little bit too efficient, and there's not enough fights and budget blowouts and things like that. It's a pretty well-oiled machine. So I think they feed on the really complicated things that are not going to work very easily, I think.
Absolutely. When you sat down, had that red wine with your old man, your folks anyway, what was your goal then, and what's changed to your goals today for future, Kimo?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the original goal was the original goal was probably to keep my wife from leaving me and find her something constructive to do that she could sink her teeth into. But yeah, the goal has changed. So the farm's a good farm. It turns a good profit, but the tourism business went past it about a year and a half ago in the middle of COVID. So the potential for it is much greater than the farm unless markets go crazy, and it doesn't take up much land. So the farm business can operate as it always has, and this can just sort of, because part of it was my vet said, how much you're making per hectare, how much profit per hectare. And I thought, that's a good way to look at it. And I thought, what can I do with that hectare and that hectare and that hectare? And so these little patches that we're just sort of fencing off of rocky outcrops that are pretty useless for feed quality, or, they're not great paddocks. They're making more money if you include the whole paddock that they were put in than you would off half the farm. So the ability to add things like it on small parcels of land that sort of feed into each other, I think it's got a huge amount of potential to keep going. And I wonder where we would have been if we hadn't run into the COVID, because we were really rolling and everything was just rolling into the next thing, and we didn't have time to think about it. And it just, if the one worked, we'd go into the next one. So I feel like we're sort of 3 years behind, but I think we've got the ability to create something that is iconic in New South Wales, in rural New South Wales. I think we've got the ability to create something that's iconic in agriculture, as an archetype or a case study in adding value to patches of land. We're looking at some share farming arrangements on the agricultural side that along the same concept of just using a small patch of land with someone else to use a bit more intensively or efficiently, or so I think, as far as that goes, it's got a lot of potential. Where it's going to finish, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the next little set of plans does if this restaurant goes well. And the huts, I'm not too worried about. I think they'll go pretty well. But if the restaurant goes well, it probably allows for a lot more accommodation. It possibly allows for a microbrewery or a distillery or something in an old shed that we're not entirely using, or one that we want to replace. Like the wool shed needs replacing at some stage because it's 140 years old, 130 years old. So whether it's got a more valuable use than 2 weeks of shearing a year, there's lots of ways it can go. It'll be interesting to see where it ends up. To be honest, I don't know.
You could do a learning experience, and the guest could have a crack at shearing a sheep, and then your sheep are all done. Perfect.
Yeah, well, my shearing contractor, I think, has got it pegged in as a retirement option where he can shear 2 sheep a day and have a bit of a yarn to everyone. And so there's certainly, that's something that we really haven't pushed. We've sort of been more infrastructure based, but
Live like a shearer.
Yeah, it's based on the human capital you got. So if you got the people to do it, it's easy. But finding those people who want to do such a thing is in a place that has never really been that innovative in its nature. It's the Gundagai. Yeah, it's a nice place. It's slowly been going backwards for 80 years since the gold mine stopped. The Hume Highway bypass it, and that was not seen as an opportunity. It was seen as a detriment. And it's 12,000 cars a day passing by, but not going up your main street. The ability to get them off the highway has sort of been forgotten, rather than, I think they got a bit lazy with them coming right through the middle. So there's still plenty of scope for the place to improve, and I think it has in the last 5 or 6 years. I think it's sort of started to turn the corner, and we're quite hopeful that other people might start up something to. There's a lot of opportunity for our guests to go and do something during the day. There's business opportunities, there's money there, and they want to spend it. So hopefully we get a few other operators picking up, based off our, custom and success, that maybe they should try their hand at something, as you said, someone down the road with a shearing shed. I think there's a place for someone to do that. It's just a matter of them doing it, really.
Yeah, it's probably primed to leverage off that and actually win-win for everyone, your town and everything. Does Gundagai have an airport, or can you fly from Sydney?
No, it doesn't. Wagga's the closest airport. We have we have a decent sized airstrip that may come in handy in the future. No, Gundagai had the opportunity for the RAF base and regional airport, which is in Wagga now, and decided it was a little bit too much change for them, so they turned it down, which was quite an error at the time, I think. But I think the road's still the major. The road is still the major thing. I don't think even if you had a little airport, you could get as many people in and out as you do down that road. It's 12,000 cars a day on average is a hell of a lot of people. If you assume that every one of them's average of 2 people in them, maybe with trucks and families sort of combined, you got 24,000 people. There's not many places in Australia where small country towns where 24,000 people are passing by in a day. So I think the opportunity is still there. I don't think that's gone. It'd be nice. And look, the main street's been done up, at great expense to the ratepayers not long ago, but it is an improvement. And now we've got a business in town. We feel like we are getting a little bit of return on that, those rate increases. But look, it's got everything it needs now to really flourish. I mean, I've been half joking, but quite serious that Gundagai's the new Barrel. You see the flash places coming down the highway. Barrel got a bit dear, then Yass started to pick up, and then even Jugiong picked up with a couple of businesses starting up, and it's only natural that Gundagai's next down the line. So still pretty cheap to buy places there if you can find them. There's still lots of land, so there's the ability for a council to, open up some building regulations and allow some weekender stuff out of Sydney. I think it'd be a very sensible thing to do.
Absolutely. And when you sort of had these goals, did you write them down in the end and sort of see how far you come from, or was it just all?
Yeah, we did. We've got a business plan that sort of has got some structure to where we are going.
I think red, white, the ideas will flow.
Yeah, and it gets updated every time we need to sort of apply for another grant or sort of show someone that we're serious about what we're doing. We use that and another marketing document quite regularly, which means that it gets updated. And I even went through one just the other day that we'd done 2018, and we've actually pretty much done everything that we put on it at that stage, and we've added a similar amount of projects to the back end of it. So there is a plan. It's not set in stone, obviously, but it's a progression of things that if they work, the next ones along the line is, you know, this idea, and then if that works, there's another one, and so I think you've got to put them down. I think if you don't put them down on a bit of paper, you even if you forget about them and pick them up 2 years later, at least you can see whether you're close to hitting your targets. If you don't, why you haven't, you can start to think about it. The ones you hit early, you can pat yourself on the back for. So I think those sorts of things are pretty important to have a benchmark for yourself of what you've done and where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. And even especially for farmers, I reckon, for goal setting, to write them down and see how far you've come. And if you didn't go that far, why didn't you readjust and adapt to what that is?
Yep, I have one for the farming business as well. So it's something that I do use. I think, as they say, reach for the stars, and if you only get to the moon, you're going okay. So I think there's value in it either way.
Yeah, 100%. And another question on my lips is, why Kimo? How did you come up with that name?
Oh, so the name is a historic name. So between Gundagai and Wagga, there's 90 kilometres straight line sort of thing, and there used to only be 4 properties between Gundagai Township and Wagga, and Kimo was one of the original runs. We had a lot of trouble finding where the name did come from. We've had several things. There's a letter that was sent to the Queen at the time, King at the time, I think it was 1902 something, 02 or 3 or 4, and it had Kimo on it as basically referring to mountains or hills. And then I had another one, and we couldn't find anything for years before the advent of the internet. No one knew. Everyone just knew it as Kimo. It had always been that. Sturt spoke about the Kimo range when he toured got there in 1829. I think he referred to not being able to cross the Kimo range. Now, whether or not that's where it came from with the mountains and the hills idea. However, ChatGPT just the other day just told me it means brush-tailed possum. So I can't get to the source of that. I've only new to the software, but it keeps telling me that it means brush-tailed possum, and there's lots of them around the homestead. So it's quite conceivable that it means both, or a combination, or there's lots of possums in the hills. So I'm sure it's an Aboriginal term. But it's just finding out what it actually is proving quite difficult.
So there was no discussion about what the name was going to be. Everyone was pretty certain on.
No, it's just it's always just been the property's been Kimo. The family before us had it for 100 years. We've had it for 45. It was that's what it is. That's the valley. That's the area. That's it was easy. It was easy to come up with that. It was that was not difficult. Whether or not the restaurant needs to be called something different is another story. I haven't even got to that stage yet. But whether or not it's just the homestead at Kimo Estate, it's keep it simple. We're sort of still working through what we call it next. We were talking to another bloke about a golf course the other day, and he just said, "Well, what would you call it?" And I said, "I don't know, probably Kimo." I think the brand's strong enough. I think we might have to I don't know. We might have to do something different, but once you've got a brand that you've got out there, it's hard to deviate from it. I mean, even Flash Jacks in Gundagai, we've brought back under the Kimo umbrella now, just because it makes sense to leverage off the traffic we're getting on online. And do we want to try and market two things at once, or do we try and put them together and package them up? And I think the package works pretty well.
Absolutely. For yourself, if you started all over right now for Kimo, would you do it again?
Yeah, it's been the single best decision that we made to come down here. Where we've got a successful business, we've got good employees. We've got a staff now of 30.
Right.
32 or 3 people, plus the farm workers. So look, we're impacting in the tourism sphere. We've been sort of, it's been recognised by the tourism bodies that we're doing a good job with it. We've been able to sort of help other people pick up, and get some businesses going and mentor some young kids. And I think it just feels like there's a bit of a nearly even a legacy sort of situation to it, that we're leaving something for the generations, are going to benefit from one way or the other, whether it stays in the family or whether it's sold, it's at some late future point. The work that we're doing is adding a huge amount of value to the land that we have. So I think it's I would do it again. It's been a terrific idea.
Well, it sounds like it's all sort of flowing well for you, even though we went through COVID and sort of took you back those few years, but I'm sure you'll get on the right track and you've got plenty of ideas going on the golf course. I thought just before in Hawaii or something, they got that $1 million golf hole. You should just build one so it gets all the blokes and the women to come out and just see if they can get a hole in one in this thing. I don't know, maybe the local council puts up some money, hint.
Yeah, they don't have any money, they're broke. So, but no, look, I like that idea. I like the idea as well of having like a skins tournament, because I don't mind a punt. And if you could get some broken down old superstar golfers like, John Daly and Tiger Woods limping around and, playing for some cash, or it's just, I just like it. I think it's got some marketing value. It's fun. It's not boring. There's certainly lots of things you can do.
Instead of the live tour, the golf tour, you could call it the Kim tour.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
And Dave, what would be your number one piece of farms advice you'd like to pass on for anyone looking to get into agritourism? They may be thinking it's a little bit too late. I'm probably one of them as well, just to open up our avenues like you did back in the day. What would that be? How to get started?
Oh, look, it's not too late. We didn't start until I was 35. We'd gone off and done other careers. So as far as, age, it's not a worry. I think the more of these sort of things there are, the more likely people are to get out of town. So I don't think that there's a saturation point at all, really. I think that if they're done correctly, they draw people, which then in turn draws more people and draws more business. And I think I think long term it's a great way for farms to drought-proof themselves in one way, and then the other thing is that we've never been, as farmers, very good at doing extra bits on the side. We've always been just slugging our guts out and doing things that are not, they're great for the farm, but there's not a lot of thanks and there's not a lot of praise associated with them. So when you do something that people get to enjoy, they let you know that they've had a good time, and it picks up your spirits that these people like this place as much as you do. you love the patch of dirt you've got, and you know how good it is. So when other people get to see that, and all you got to do is think about when you have guests come and stay from the city, what they think when they stay at your house. They all have a terrific time. They love getting out on the motorbikes, and the kids love rolling around in the mud and poking sticks in, ants' nests. And if you just think about that, just based on your small circle of friends and family, how much they enjoy the place, well, there's no reason to think that other people who haven't got access to such a place wouldn't like it. They don't have access to these sort of places, and that's the beauty, is that you're providing them with a spot that they can see it. They can experience it. So I think there's plenty of scope for other people to get involved in it.
Absolutely, well said as well. What's a piece of farms advice that someone's given you over the years?
Well, I think get help before you need it. That was terrific advice. And the other bit I liked from the same person in the same conversation was, you need to spend some time on your business, not just in your business. So putting plans together, doing some of the things that are more about where you're headed and assessing where you're been, not just working the whole time and not looking at those things, because those are the things that that time you spend on direction and sort of assessing elements that you're doing or things that you're not doing well. They're the things that really improve any business. So and those guys are in the wedding business, and that just applies to any business I can think of. So they're my two favourite bits of advice.
Unreal pieces of advice as well. So if any farmers listening are looking for a bit of a getaway, how can we book at Kimo Estate, one of the 54 beds that you have?
Yeah, cool. So the website's kimoestate.com, KIMO estate.com. Instagram's probably one of our big ones, where people can get to see just about everything that we do there, including farm work and nice looking people in hot tubs and flash buildings and all sorts of stuff. No, not now. No, I've only been in there twice, actually, in 3 years. There's no vacancies, so generally someone's in there all the time. But that's probably the best way. I'm on there all the time, so that's Kimo Estate is the handle there. We're also on Facebook, which you can search as well, yep. and technically TikTok and technically YouTube as well. So we've kind of got them all covered.
Snapchat, Twitter, the list goes on. No
Snapchat for me. I'm too old.
We'll put the links in the show notes. So anyone that's looking for a break, I think it's pretty good for farmers to go out, maybe even have a sticky beak day.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, I'm always open to have a chat about potential projects as well. I've helped a lot of people around the country and a few internationally. So I'm happy to have a chat if people have got ideas as well. You just need to reach out. I'm pretty much very open book. So
yep, I'll have to be number one on that list surely.
Cool. No, anytime, mate.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks for coming on Farms Advice Podcast.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
This Farms Advice episode does not stop here. Come and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and even join our Facebook group. Go to farmsadvice.com.au for more on this episode and spread the hashtag farmsadvice to your mates. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, that will let other farmers find us too. But until then, see you next Tuesday.